Amid all the excitement of Jodie Whittaker taking over as the first female Doctor Who, the new series is also being praised for its diversity in other areas too.
Yeah, one of the show's new characters is shining a light on the neurological condition dyspraxia, which affects movement and coordination for around 1 in 10 people in the UK.
Now, in a moment, we're going to be speaking to someone with the condition as well as a leading therapist in the field. But first, let's take a look as Ryan learns to ride a bike.
3, 2, 1, go! Go on!
Go on, Ryan! You're doing it, mate!
Nearly.
No, not nearly. I'm sick of coming up here. I'm sick of falling. And I'm sick of this stupid bike.
Ryan Sinclair, don't you dare!
Let's talk to a couple of guests about this to see what they've got to say. Ben Smith, you've got dyspraxia. Sally Payne is a trustee of the Dyspraxia Foundation, who working with people who have the condition. Ben, first of all, you must be quite pleased to see someone with dyspraxia given that kind of platform on the new series of Doctor Who.
Oh, it's fantastic. I think certainly having that awareness out there of more people, taking that first step, finding out what it is, or just that kind of thing affects people is fantastic.
And just to explain for people, dyspraxia, we were talking in the office earlier on about whether or not breakfast, we've talked a lot about things like dyslexia and things like that. I'm not sure we've talked about dyspraxia, certainly not very often before. Just explain to people what it is.
So it's a developmental condition that affects organisation of thought and movement, which is basically everything. But in particular people, it tends to be things like gross motor things like riding a bike, fine motor things like handwriting, organisation of remembering birthdays, struggling to concentrate, struggling not to concentrate so much that it's 4 hours later and you haven't had anything to eat and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. That kind of thing. It's got a lot of different ways it affects particular people.
Sally, you've been working with Ben for a while. You met him when he was younger and you've worked together to find some sort of coping strategies. How common a problem is this? Because lots of people don't know about dyspraxia, and even if they did, they're not quite sure what to do with it, because I believe it's a lifelong condition. Is that right?
Yes, it's a condition that affects around 5% of the school-age population, 2% to a more severe degree, and the research tells us that it continues into adolescence and adulthood in around 50 to 70% of cases. So that's probably about 3% of adults who are affected. But as Ben says, it affects people in different ways. So no two people with dyspraxia are the same. It's a disorder that affects movement, but also sort of non-motor skills such as organisation and planning as well.
Must make it very difficult to diagnose, therefore, if the way it presents is different in different cases.
Yeah, there are some key factors. So we'd want to see that people's movements are more difficult than you'd expect to see given their age and the experience that they've had previously. So there are some diagnostic criteria. It's a condition that is a medical diagnosis, but people often see an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist as part of that assessment pathway.
Ben, this hasn't held you back, has it?
I think it's very difficult to say whether it's held me back.
Yeah.
Certainly I've managed to achieve some big things with it. I graduated from my degree recently, got into a master's programme. And I think that's an experience a lot of dyspraxic people have. It's easier to achieve a big thing where they can put their personal qualities into it, whether that's intelligence, creativity, the kind of determination we saw from Ryan in the episode, than small things like being able to ride a bike or use knives and forks without spilling things on your trousers.
Because this is one of the issues, isn't it? It's about using, some people struggle with using both hands at the same time. So it was quite interesting. I'd like to get your thoughts on the episode where he's climbing up a ladder and using his feet rather than, hands on the ladder. I mean, how realistic has the portrayal been in your eyes?
Well, that was something that struck you particularly, wasn't it, the ladder?
I very much liked the way that he was portrayed. I think they need to diversify it as it goes on and show him having more issues, but even simple things like him climbing the ladder, you know, one limb at a time, hand, foot. Yeah, that was fantastic. That is the way I used to climb a ladder as a kid. It's great that they put that effort into the small details and making dyspraxic people feel really represented.
But by complete coincidence, yesterday, I was speaking to someone who mentioned that his son had been diagnosed with dyspraxia, and his school had been able then, when they spotted it, they had been able to tailor the way he was taught to enable him to, you know, achieve his best maximum potential. Is it something, without wishing to be in any way lead you into criticising the teaching profession, but is it something that teachers are aware of, that it can be managed?
Yeah, I think it's something, an awareness that's growing. We're way behind some of the other developmental conditions in terms of awareness, and that's one of the things that the Dyspraxia Foundation is really keen to do, is to raise awareness and help teachers to understand just what they can do to, as you say, make sure that people are able to reach their potential in all areas of their lives.
Thank you both very much indeed for coming in to talk to us. It's really interesting. Thank you. Ben Smith and Sally Payne. Thank you.